Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sideline, guys. I am Chris, and today I'm joined by two very special guests, two familiar faces on this show already. Some would say at this point that they're already family. So once again, thank you guys for coming on. I'm really looking forward to this show. We have Matt. So Matt, please tell the people where they could find you, what kind of content you're doing, and yeah.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm back for I think this is the third time I'm here doing it on Silent Guys. Appreciate you for having me, as always, Chris. Um, because you guys are unfamiliar, I do two other podcasts here on the OTS, or actually three other podcasts here on the OTS platform, and that includes Boom Squad with my best friend Peyton. We basically discuss everything video game related. I also got We Could Be Heroes with my brother Jonathan, where we discuss Marvel, DC, Star Wars, you name it, just uh peak nerd, if you will. And then of course I do Realist with with Derek. And actually Chris was a guest for last week's episode. We had some great conversations. So that's where you can find me. And yeah, like I said, I appreciate you for having me. And I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Always a pleasure to have you on. And then, of course, another returning guest. My guy, honestly, at this point, we got enough. I think I got more content with you than any other podcaster besides Derek. But please let the people know where they can find you as well.
So yeah, you can find me at the Real Deal WDA. That's on all social media platforms. You're gonna get a lot of good videos there, predictions, recaps, everything in between. A lot of good content on there on social media. For my podcast, it's the Real Deal with Damien Adams. You'll catch at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So you might get a little bonus episode in there. So go ahead and check that out. And the Third and Three podcast we record every Wednesday night live on Facebook at 7 p.m. Eastern. Can't catch it live. You catch it afterwards on all social media platforms as well. That's a football-based podcast. Normally, we're previewing what's coming up the following week, and we get into some really funny stuff, some good stuff that we got there with good chemistry on that show. So check that one out as well.
Yes, sir, as always. And I've been campaigning. I've been talking to Jason. I'm trying to find my way onto that 3rd and 3 shot. I don't know what I need to do to get on, but at this point, I don't know. I think I've done enough, but we'll see. Well, hopefully soon I'll get on that show. Really a big fan of everything both of you guys do. So it's dope to have you both on this week.
Thank you.
But as always, we're here to do what's important. We got to look at all these NFL games for the week and decide our picks right now. The running it's been close, right? The last two seasons, it's been close. But it's never been wider than this as far as the amount of picks that I'm ahead of Derek. So right now I'm sitting on a nice, comfy lead. I get to talk my shit. I can't wait till he comes back next week, so I could really remind him of just how big of a lead I am in right now. But right now, I believe the numbers are 109 and 70 and 1 for me, while it's 101, 78 and 1 for Derek. So I'm about 8 games ahead right now. It's a nice, comfy lead. Got a couple of weeks to hold it. I think I will, and then I'll finally get my first pick championship this year. So that's what I'm hoping for. So let's get on the right track with these picks. Let's make sure that we have everything listed out. And I'm really interested because there's a couple of these games that I'm actually excited for. I feel like the last couple of weeks there's been a lot of duds on the schedule, so it's good to see some competitive games. But the first game, the Thursday night game, is actually going on as we speak. So we're recording this on a Thursday evening. So we have the Raiders up against the Rams in LA. Not really a home game, but they're in LA nonetheless. Baker obviously made his way over there, but not starting tonight. Matt, I'll throw this one to you. How do you, first of all, the state of these two teams, right? Let's talk about that, and then who are you leaning towards in this matchup?
Yeah, so I think the Raiders started off terribly, to say the least. I mean, they're in a division that everyone predicted to be ultra competitive, a huge, bunch of quarterback duels, and it turns out that it seems to be a one-sided affair. I mean, the Chiefs, as of this moment, are one win away, and a Chargers lost away from securing the division, in Week 14. But the Raiders have a nice little hot streak going on. I think they're getting the run game going. Derek is making some good decisions with Devontae. That chemistry is still building up. You compare that to the Rams, who Um, may God have mercy on their soul. They're 3-9. I don't think anybody expected the Super Bowl champions to be in that position. Matthew Stafford being out put on IR, Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Aaron Donald's out with a high ankle sprain, if I'm not mistaken, or ankle injury. So it's tough sledding. I think if I'm the Rams, I would just start tanking subtly. Try to secure draft picks because your future is tough. I mean, you give up a lot of your draft picks just to, be the juggernaut you were supposed to be. But all that being said, I'll take the Raiders in a not so competitive matchup. So
Nice. I like that analysis. You pretty much took everything. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna give you. Let me just write in your pick. So you have the Raiders. For this matchup, I'm also going to be going for the Raiders just because of the state they're at right now. I feel like if this match happened like week one, like this is an entirely different conversation, right? So this really speaks to the grind that the NFL season is. But I think something that low key had me hype when Baker Mayfield hit the waiver wire. I was like, hold on. So there's a chance he ends up in San Francisco, and then my bet is in play. I don't know if you guys remember. I had a bet with Derek going on where I said that Baker Mayfield will lead a team to the playoffs as their starting quarterback before Colin Kaepernick starts a game in the NFL. So none of us at this point are close. But when I saw there was a glimmer in my eye, there was a window where that could have happened for me this year. But the waiver wire had it different, and he ended up with the Rams. So he's not even starting tonight. But I mean, if anything speaks to tanking, it's that, right? That's a move that you had to make. And at this point, imagining him on this team after all the headlines at the start of this season, like I feel like both of these teams have really just not panned out the way things have, the way we thought it would be at the start of the season. So I'm going with the Raiders here. That's the pick that makes sense. What are your thoughts, Damien?
Nah, I definitely agree with everything you guys said about both teams. Uh, the Raiders, if man, they would have found this little rhythm maybe 2 weeks earlier. We're talking about, a completely different story. And the Rams just never had it this year. And it's just gotten worse and worse as the season's gone along. So you talk about two teams going in different directions, got to go with thinking that direction is going to stay. So I'm going Vegas over the Rams 23-14.
20, nice. I love it. I forgot to mention that. So I'm gonna be doing my picks too for the rest of the. I got to get these scores out there. But yeah, there's not much to say about this matchup. I'm sure by the end of this show we'll have an idea of who the clear winner is, but we won't even jump back to that because not worthy in my opinion. There's some good games to look forward to. So next
Yeah.
up, Vikings at the Lions in Detroit. A sneaky good matchup considering where these teams are at this stage of the season. I'm not going to cut up too much time for you. So, Damien, I'm going to throw it right to you. What do you think about how these teams match up at this week of the season? Because I feel like I'm actually more excited than I would be a couple weeks ago about this matchup.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we're seeing a different side of Detroit. And Minnesota has been winning, but they've been very, very just a team that looks beatable, right, in those wins. And like against the Jets in the second half, the Jets outplayed them that second half. They were holding on like, just like Spider-Man trying to hold the train up. They were holding on so tight just to keep everything going. And you can see where, some of those webs may pop. And I think what's going to happen in this game. Those webs are going to pop, and you got Detroit winning 30-27 in this one.
30 to 20. I love it. That's hilarious. I can't wait to give my prediction because it's not far off at all. But what are your thoughts on this matchup, Matt?
I think the Vikings are a top 10 team, right? I mean, I think they have great individual pieces. Um, I think me personally, I think they're fraudulent, and maybe that's the spiteful Bill in me because, of the way we lost to them, what 3 weeks ago at this point. But I don't know. It's just I think their interior offensive line is terrible, for lack of a better word, and I think similar to what Damon was saying as well. I mean, the Lions have shown some life. It's just unfortunate that they're catching it at a very critical juncture because they're 5-7, or actually, yeah, they're 5-7 to this point. And best case scenario, they go 9-8. At at minimum, right? And maybe secure a wild card spot. But um, these teams tend to play each other really close. So even looking back to last year. So I'll go with the Lions at home, given what's at stake for them. And I think the Vikings are going to get exposed a little bit in terms of what they can really do offensively. So
I like that. I like that. So Derek is the only one out of all of us that's picking the Vikings. So I have his picks as well. So I'll be throwing them in there. I'm also going with the Lions. I had it 30-26. So real close to Damien as well. I just think no matter what in divisional matchups, it's gonna be close. And I think the Lions have had a lot to play for these last couple of weeks, and honestly have been looking good not just on offense but on defense too, like being able to stop a lot of people with that front four. I'm really liking what their defense has because I mean I'm gonna be real. It's a throwback defense in a lot of ways. It's a lot of white dudes with long hair making plays, and you love to see that. I'm a fan of what Detroit's doing. I've been a fan of what they've been doing since the beginning of the year. So I think they're gonna edge this one out. But I won't be surprised at all if the Vikings end up keeping it close and making it a real tight game. So looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. But next up, we have what I think should be a very easy game. Very easy game to pick. I'm actually offended by Derek's pick. I'm going to say right off the top, he's going with the Steelers. But we have the Ravens at Pittsburgh facing up against the Steelers in another divisional matchup. Matt, I'll throw to you on this one. What are your thoughts on this week and the way these teams are going to look up against each other?
yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris. I gotta go with the Steelers. I think it's just too many injuries. Lamar Jackson's out. And it's a divisional game on the road. So yeah, that's about all I gotta say. You can roast me, if I'm wrong come, Sunday, but yeah, that's my 2 cents.
All right. Keep it short and sweet. What about you, Damien? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I still think that Baltimore is the better team, even with the backup quarterback. That offense can still run in a very similar fashion with Huntley in there. And Huntley didn't look great against Denver, but you got to remember Denver's defense is very, very, very good. So I don't think that he's going to look anywhere near, to struggle that much against this defense. So I'm going to go with Baltimore in this one. I'm going to go 20-17. I do think it's a close game.
I like that. Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a close game, another grind them out kind of scenario. And I feel good having one of the best, well, probably the best kicker in history on my side of things when I know it's going to be a close matchup like that. I think the real story on this is obviously there's a lot of people on my team that are on the injury report, but there's a lot of big names for the Steelers as well. Obviously, Najee Harris having some injury complications with his oblique. Um, he didn't show up for practice, but it's still obviously to be determined whether or not he's going to play. So that's big. And then of course Larry Ogunjobi, their big pickup from the Bengals, having some toe issues, and then T.J. Watt still uncertain as well for Sunday. So I think, like you said, defensively, they match up well, especially considering that Huntley's going to be out there. But with those pieces being missing, I really feel like even when fully healthy, like I think this was going to be a grind them out game anyway. But considering that there's a lot of things bouncing our way as far as injuries on the defensive side of things, I'm looking forward to seeing how that offense is going to look, specifically how the tight ends are going to look. Because I feel like the last 2 weeks, we haven't really broke out, right? And our tight ends are our wide receiver room, sadly. So gotta hope we get some production out of them this week for sure. I'm going 16-9. That's my prediction. Gonna be an ugly one for sure, but I think we get it down on the road. So another divisional game here. We got the Browns up against the Bengals. I think all of them are actually divisional this week. So let me stop mention. No, not all of them, but most of them. We have the Browns up against the Bengals. Damien, this is the Bengals have been surging, man. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
They have been surging, but that game, Monday Night Football, sticking out to me right now. Cleveland was able to dominate Cincinnati in that one, and you wonder if the way that Cincinnati has Kansas City's number, you wonder if Cleveland has Cincinnati's number in that same type of fashion. So I do think it's going to be close because of that. But I believe in Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase to be able to edge it out. So I'm going to go Cincinnati 24-20.
Nice, another close one. Matt, Let me find out you low key love yourself some Joe Burrow too. I just feel like you're a quarterbacks guy. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Look, I love Joe Sicey as much as the next person, but um he's 0-4 against actually no, it can't be 0-4. I think he's 0-3 against the Browns if I'm not I know he's winless against the Browns.
Mhm.
I think that's gonna stay its course on Sunday.
Mm.
So I want to go with the Browns. It's weird. I think it's really like how Tom Brady struggles with the Saints. You know what I mean? Like very close games. Um, you often see very uncharacteristic decisions by the quarterback. Because I guess sometimes there are some schemes that quarterbacks struggle against for whatever reason. Especially when it's in division rivals. So yeah, I think we'll see a bit of that on Sunday in a close game. In a close game though.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be close with this Bengals team. I feel like their defense specifically underperforming is the reason why I'm going with the Bengals. I feel like throughout the entire year, they haven't really been consistent on the defensive end, and that's where you would think they would be the most, considering everything they had going on this year. So I agree. And hey, you could see right there. I told you earlier that Damien was a Saints fan, so he threw it in there. I like that. I like that. You could see he was listening. I'm gonna go. Bengals, but it's also gonna be close. I'm gonna say give me 21-14. How about that?
Yeah.
Next up, Jets at the Bills. Another fun divisional matchup. Um, I picked this one right last time going with the Jets, and I'm fucking doing it again, right in your face, man. I don't care.
Mm.
My main reason is first, Vaughn isn't playing. I think that's a huge factor in this matchup specifically, especially with Mike White being their savior at quarterback. Let's start there. I think giving him a little bit more time to operate. Obviously, you have a great secondary as well, so it's not easy, right? It's not going to be an easy matchup on offense. But giving him a little bit more time to be in the pocket, a little bit more time to find his footing in this game, I think is really going to go a long way for them in this matchup. So I think this is going to be another grind them out game. I'm going to say give me 24-20 for the Jets. And this is one that I may come to regret, but I just feel like these guys have your number this year, man. I'm gonna let you go last. So Damien, what are your thoughts on Jets at Bills?
I could definitely see it being a very close game. I think the Von Miller injury is definitely a big factor, but got to go with Buffalo in this one. I think that there were a lot of things that went the Jets' way in that first game that won't go their way this time. I don't see Josh Allen playing as badly as he did in that first matchup. He had some very just ugly picks where you're like, what are you seeing? And I don't think that's gonna happen this time around. So give me Buffalo 24, Jets 17.
You got the floor, Matt. Eviscerate
Appreciate
me.
you,
Go ahead.
Damien. No, I appreciate you, Damien, for sticking up for my Bills. But yeah, I mean, I had to piggyback off of that point. I mean, you look at the game, and if Josh doesn't throw a pick on the opening drive, we score at minimum a field goal, and we win the game because we would have been up, or maybe the game would have been tied. You know what I'm saying? It was just very uncharacteristic choices by Allen that they were quite frankly frustrating to watch live. Um, and I think, look, the Jets defense is no joke. I think Robert Saleh is doing a heck of a job over there. They have two fantastic corners, um, a really disruptive D line, that can get to the quarterback. But I think Allen's been playing some very, conservative, smart football lately. And I don't see him making wacky mistakes like he was doing the last time around. Do I expect it to be a tough game? Absolutely. I'm not going in expecting us to drop 40 piece on the Jets defense. You know what I mean? Nor am I expecting the Jets offense to keep stalling out. You know what I mean? Mike White didn't look awful against the Vikings. Red zone wise, they weren't, that productive, obviously, to score a lot of field goals. But I don't know. I think if you're a football fan and you're not a Bills or a Jets fan, I think you're gonna like this game. if you're a Bills or Jets fan, you're going to be stressed the hell out for 60 plus minutes. So I'll go with the Bills. I'll go with the Bills. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not eviscerating you. I'm giving my 2 cents, my analysis.
I like it. I like it. I just feel like the last time I made the pick, Derek was like, "What? Like, are you serious?" And then ended up coming true. But yeah, I agree. It's gonna be a hairy one as far as it playing out down the stretch. So we'll see. Next up, Texans at the Cowboys. We don't gotta spend too much time on this one, right? Texans all day, unanimous.
Yeah, may as well. Easy, easy
I'm
choice.
going with Cowboys. Let's make it fun here. 42-14.
Yeah, I'm with you on the big score. I got Cowboys 30, Houston 3.
Ooh, that's tough. That is tough. What about you,
Yeah.
Matt?
Let's just make it more interesting. Let's put this into a question. When do you guys think Dak gets benched? First half, or you think they go straight into Cooper Rush second half?
Get them
I can
warm
see
for the
that.
playoffs. Get them warm for the playoffs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see third quarter. I can see third quarter. Them coming. Hey, you could sit down for this one, the rest of this one, Dak.
Dakota Rain. I think he starts the game off going crazy, getting Gallup involved, and hey, we probably get out of there by the end of the third. I'm gonna say end of the third quarter.
Yeah, and of course I'm making fun of the Texans. Obviously, they have great. Every team has great players and everything. I can never do what they do, but it's yeah, the Texans are just really bad. They're really bad. And
I want him to be
I don't
good
see the
so
count.
bad though. Shout out to Lovey Smith. Like I want him to be good
I know,
so bad.
man.
And there's
I
flashes.
know.
There's flashes. I feel like according to the other teams that are at the bottom of the NFL, I feel like they can find themselves bouncing back in a couple years. But there's gonna be a lot of things that need to turn out right for them for that to work out for sure. Um,
Yeah.
but this one's another fun divisional matchup. We got the Eagles up against the Giants right here in New Jersey. Um, I'll start this one off. I'm really interested for this matchup. Now, of course, my mind says Eagles, right? Everything says Eagles. I'm not gonna actually go out and pick the Giants on this one. But I do think they're gonna make it interesting. I think this is gonna be a closer game than people expect. And I don't think the Eagles are gonna go off like they did last week offensively. I feel like it's gonna be harder for them to score, a little bit more dragged out on the offensive side of the ball, force them to run a lot more. And get it that way, which against the Giants have been a little inconsistent on that end, but better defensively as of late. So I'm really interested to see how this one plays out. I'm gonna go Eagles 24-13.
Okay. I definitely agree with you on that one. I'm going Philadelphia 27, Giants 14.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
I
what
think I'm
about you?
going I'm terrible at predicting scores, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna stick with
You're
the
good.
team selections, but yeah, I'll go with the Eagles. Definitely go with the Eagles. But hey, Martindale over the Giants DC, he's no joke. He loves putting a lot of those blitzes in. So, I do expect Jalen Hurts to make a few questionable choices, trying to play a bit of hero ball, maybe try to get the ball a bit quicker. Or maybe the Eagles offense knows that and you're saying, you know what, let's just take what the defense gives us. Let's not, you know, uh try to chuck it 50 yards downfield. Let's try running the ball a bit. And yeah, I think it to be one of the better games of the week,
Yep.
hopefully.
Yep. I think it's gonna be a little bit more of a dud, but early on at least it should be competitive, and then the Eagles sort of run away with it. Derek is also picking the Eagles, of course, the homer. Never gonna pick them to lose on this show. But next up, we've got Jaguars at the Titans. Look at both of these teams looking to bounce back after some ugly losses. On the Titans front, like I don't know how to feel about this game, right? The Jags beat my Ravens, so I'm higher on them than most people would be. Um, Titans all year have been dealing with the same struggles my Ravens have as far as having a shallow wide receiver room. Traylon Burks has been really eating lately, though, in the last couple of weeks. So if by any chance he's still available in your leagues, pick him up. Good for about 60 yards a game the last couple of weeks. Um, but I don't know. I've come on this show and ripped Tannehill enough, so I don't want to be too mean. But Just not a fan of what they do offensively. I feel like they have it's been not this year, but there's been many years where the potential offensively was there and they didn't live up to it. So on a year like this year where the potential isn't quite there, it's no surprise that they're struggling a little bit on that side of the ball. But thankfully they have one of the better defenses in the league, so that's able to carry them. I'm gonna go with the Titans on this one, especially at home. If it was on the road, I think I may have leaned honestly towards the Jags. Um, but for my score, give me 21-18.
Okay. I like it. I like it. I'm going with Tennessee as well. 20-14. Just don't see Jacksonville's offense doing that much in this game.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Give me the Titans.
Yes, sir. And we could move it on. Next up, Chiefs at Broncos. Matt, I'm gonna throw this one up to you first. With a question. Um, do the Broncos score more than 10 points this game?
Hmm. You know what? I think they'll score exactly 10 this game.
Broncos
Exactly
country.
10.
Let's ride.
Yeah. You had to say it. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Give me the Chiefs. I will say this though. This is definitely a trap game. Um, for all the obvious reasons, right? They're going against the worst offense in in the league in terms of points per game, everything. Like everything about the offense is not good at all. Defensively, they're excellent. I mean, they're a top five defense. They really kept them in every single game. But I really feel like the Chiefs are gonna make this more difficult than it has to be. I feel like they're gonna, you know, I don't know. I'm gonna have like that single feeling. You know what I mean? Like I feel like they're gonna try to do too much instead of just closing the game out. Like the Broncos are gonna be in this game too often when they could, be scoring field goals. You know what I mean? They try to take like too many deep shots into the secondary instead of running the ball. Or Mahomes doesn't check it down and he tries scrambling all over the place and then drops like a one dime to a Kelsey and then he tries to hit a wide open receiver and then it gets deflected up in the air, intercepted, and then defense has to go back out into the field. I feel like it's going to be that type of game, but I do see the Chiefs winning. So
I like that. Yeah, I was gonna say, especially with the altitude, I could see Chris Jones on that oxygen right now. Like right before the game even starts, he's on that oxygen. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be a tough one on that defense. What are your thoughts, Damien?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys on that. I think that Denver 10 points sounds about right against the Chiefs. I can see maybe the opening drive, everything's all scripted and you know exactly what you need to do. I can see maybe that first drive going well. And then after that, just struggle, what they've been doing all year. And that defense will keep them in it. They'll keep them in it and it'll keep everything under for my betting fans out there. I'm going Kansas City 20 and Denver 10.
20-10. I like that. I didn't give my score prediction, so give me 24-7. That's my plan. Next up, Panthers at the Seahawks, getting that help from that 12th man. Um, Panthers gonna need all the help they could get in this one. Good revival game for the Seahawks here. I'm definitely picking the Seahawks. I'm gonna go 32-17. Let's go big. Why not? What about you, Matt? How you feeling about this matchup?
yeah, I think Seahawks have definitely had their inconsistencies this season. Their defense has been struggling as of late, but I think they figured out this game again against a Panthers team who's also dealing with their fair share of struggles. Yeah, so I'll take give me the Seahawks.
Yes, sir. What about you, Damien?
Yeah, I'm going Seahawks as well, 24-14.
24-14. I like it. Not much to say about this game. We'll move right on. Bucks at the Niners. Sneaky fun game here. First of all, I love seeing Brady go against top defenses just because I like seeing the Duke get destroyed. I'll say it to the people in the back. Hate me some Tom Brady, but you got to talk. You got to get it while you could get it. We only got a couple more years of seeing him get stacked, right? So I'm liking my thought. I'm liking how I'm feeling going into this one. Obviously the Niners are in a tough position. It sucks that they're on their third string quarterback, Brock Purdy, doing his darndest to keep this team in it while his defense just continues to ball out. Man, I think, and I always get this messed up. Off the top of the head, please tell me if I'm wrong about this. Um, it's Nick Bosa, right? In for the Niners. I'm getting that correct. I
Yeah.
hope. Perfect. Okay. I
Yeah.
think he can make a sneaky run for Defensive Player of the Year this year, especially given that they're on their third string quarterback these last couple of weeks. So I'm interested to see how this one plays out. I'm gonna pick the Niners here at home, but this is gonna be an ugly one. Give me 17-10 Niners. So what about you, Matt? What are your thoughts?
Uh, Give me the Niners. I mean that pass rush is insane. Uh, so I don't know. I think Tom Brady's gonna probably make a call in the offseason to the 49ers and see if they're looking for another starting quarterback besides Jimmy G. So yeah, I'll take the Niners at home.
Dope, dope. What about you, Damien?
Yeah, I'm going 49ers as well. I don't see the Bucks offense doing anything against that defense. So even with my man, Mr. Irrelevant, I think that offense will be able to do enough in this one. I'm going 49ers 17, Bucks 7.
Bucks 7. I love it. Tom Brady in the mud, baby. Let's go. Four people picking the Niners here on this show, so I'm hoping this one doesn't come to bite me in the ass. But I love to see Tom Brady struggling like this. Next up, Dolphins at the Chargers. Just hater energy going into this pick. I love it. I'm gonna throw it over to you, Damien, because I think this is honestly my favorite game of the year. Right? I mean, not of the year. Sorry, of the week. I think the offensive potential for both of these teams in this game has me really hyped up. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Definitely a high scoring one. I just feel like this one can go either way. Matt, help me out. Help me out what I think about this one.
Yeah, I got you. So you want I can have the personal Bills bias come out, but yeah, no. In all seriousness, I think it's funny too because this is the battle between the 2020 draft, right? Everyone's saying how the Dolphins should have chosen Herbert over Tua. So who knows? Maybe I think this is maybe a statement win for Tua, a necessary win for the Dolphins team as a whole. They want to potentially secure the AFC East. So give me the Dolphins, because it's just Herbert, as fantastic as he is, and I think Chris knows how much I adore the guy. He's unfortunately on a team that has very, poor coaching, and it's just that defense isn't doing him any help either. One week it looks great, another week it struggles. Uh, it's just there's no telling with this team. The Chargers don't know whether they want to be a good or bad team. They just want to keep being this like, oh, I'm gonna lose this week. Oh, I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win again. Now let me lose. I'm gonna lose straight in a row. They keep being this like 9-8 team. It's just frustrating. I can imagine being a Chargers fan. Like, can you're like, would you rather like? I feel like the Chargers can be one of two things. This be really good or be really bad. But they keep doing this middle of the road thing, and it's like I don't know what to think of them. You know.
For sure.
But sorry. Anyways, rambling on.
I like it.
Give me the Dolphins.
I like it. No, don't worry at all. I hate that you I hate that you broke it down that way because I was really feeling my Chargers pick until you broke it down that way. And I think the big difference, I think Eckler's gonna go crazy in this game, and I think that's what's gonna make it a really close one. But I actually do agree with you on that last point. I really feel like the Dolphins defense wasn't as hyped up coming into this season as the Chargers defense was, and they've just outperformed them. And they're not one of the best units in the league, but definitely doing better than the Chargers are. So I think that's important, especially in a shootout, to have that one sort of turnover at a crucial moment go your way to really put you over the edge. So I came into this one leaning into the Chargers, man. You fucking convinced me, and I hate it. I'm gonna go with the Dolphins here. Give me 42-36.
Jeez.
Ooh. Uh, I'm gonna go Miami, 28-21.
28-21. All right. So Derek is the only one who picked the Chargers. So I'm hoping we see even more flourishing on this side of the pick bracket. But our final game of the week, Monday night, Patriots up against the Cardinals. Funny enough, Matt and I were talking about this one last week. So literally, I'm gonna start it off right there about where we were talking about this. So Matt, what are your thoughts on this matchup? Pause it. Go right ahead, bro. Let me just pause this. Where is it? There.
So yeah, I think this is an interesting matchup. Um, in the sense of like one of two things, right? The first is Patriots obviously want to stay in playoff contention. So this win, as well as their subsequent matches, are very important in accomplishing that. And then on the other side too, if the Cardinals lose this game, and maybe this is a blessing in disguise for Cardinals fans in general, is one step closer for Cliff Kingsbury to be fired. You know, so I don't know sort of where you guys are, what you guys' thoughts are on that, but all that being said, I do think that if Kyler Murray is playing, if DeAndre Hopkins is playing, it's going to be tough sledding for the Patriots defense. So I want to go on a whim, and I want to choose the Cardinals to beat the Patriots.
Okay. Okay. I like that.
Ooh.
I like that. Damien, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I commend you for your bravery and taking
Someone had to
taking
do it.
that pick. Yeah, someone had to do it. But I am not as brave as you. I'm going with the Patriots. I just don't trust that Cardinals offense at all against a pretty good Patriots defense. And you mentioned how Kingsbury should be, one of those guys on the chopping blocks. I agree with you, and that's why I'm taking the Bill Belichick led Patriots over the Kingsbury led Cardinals because I feel like this is a monumental coaching mismatch that we'll see on display in this one. So give me the Patriots 20-13.
20-13. I like it. Yeah, I'm also going with the Pats in this one. You guys stole my thunder. My biggest point is like no matter how good both of these teams are on offense and defense, I'm just always going to default go with the Pats because they have Belichick while facing off against Kingsbury. Like that is the exact reason why I'm making that pick. But of course, I'm just fascinated by their ability to retool on defense every single year, get guys that literally make a career off playing defense for the Patriots, and end up getting big contracts elsewhere. It's crazy the things that they're able to do and the way they're able to keep it just like a revolving door, right? They lost two big pieces last season, so everyone thought, myself included, their defense is going to take a step back, and then of course they're just right back where they always were. So, really, really cool cog in the machine they have going on there. I'm going to also go with the Pats here. Give me 14-7. Let's make it old school, a nice old school, low scoring
Mm.
game. So that's all we got on the NFL side of things. It's been a dope. That's so weird. It's been dope as hell. Being able to go through all these different shows with you. But before we get out of here, I think there's two stories that I think we need to talk about here. Um, before we get out, two stories that aren't necessarily related to the NFL. But I'm gonna have to kick the other version of Matt out of here. I hope I kicked the right one. Are you muted right now? There we go. There we go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I am sorry about that. Did it also DC for you guys too, or is it
No.
just me for some
Yeah, it
reason?
was just
Okay.
it was just you, but all good. We're we're,
Yeah.
we're back into it. So just before you dipped out, I was saying we're all finished up with the NFL picks, but there was just a couple different topics of conversation I wanted to talk to you guys about, both revolving around UFC situations. So the first one, obviously, um, it's probably the least publicized of the two, but I think it's the biggest headline out of both of them, in my opinion. Um, this is the story about one James Krause. So I don't blame you guys if you've never heard of James Krause. Just to give a little bit of a background, James Krause is a former UFC fighter. He competed for the UFC for over 10 years in 155 pounds and then 170 later on in his career. Towards the tail end of his career, he actually opened his own gym and started cornering fighters alongside his fighting career, and ended up being pretty infamous. One of the better camps sort of emerging is Glory MMA because of what he's been able to do as a head coach. So a lot of respect to James Krause because of that. But he's taking a lot of heat right now. There's a scandal going on. I retweeted the video a couple of weeks back. I know Damien saw it, but just to give a context of the situation, there was a matchup between Derek Minner, who trains out of Glory MMA, and then listen to this one, Shailan Norambeke. If it sounds that weird phonetically, you can't even imagine how that name is spelled. Shout out my guy Shailan, but damn, you're making it hard on us out here. But that matchup was set. Derek Minner was, I believe, plus 180 underdog coming into fight week. And then out of nowhere, the line really got shredded big time. Right before the fight, like right when the lines closed, he was at like plus 440 or something like that. So a big flip as far as people putting money on Shailan to win that fight. And then when the fight itself played out, it was something that I thought was weird in the moment, but even weirder in retrospect. There was a moment in the fight where Derek Minner threw a right body kick, and as soon as it landed, it was a good kick, landed properly. But as soon as it landed and he planted his foot, he sort of grabbed at his foot immediately, like as if he injured himself or he was in pain, like reacted in a very bad way to him landing that kick. And then 2 seconds later is like, fuck it. We doing it again. We balling, and just throws the same kick again. And then from there gets TKO'd because he's in so much pain from throwing that kick again. So in the moment, it didn't feel nefarious, right? It didn't feel like I was watching a fixed fight. It didn't feel like that. But now that I'm looking back on it and we have an idea of this big line flip and sort of the idea of insider information being disseminated. So just to give another 100-foot perspective, and then I'll throw to you guys on this. James Krause is in heat right now because of this, but not just because this happened with one of his fighters, but because he also is well known in the betting community. He has his own Discord where he hosts picks and plays every single week before this. So obviously, considering you're a coach, right? You're someone who coaches fighters on the weekly, and you're out here giving picks on the same fighters that you coach and corner. That's wild in itself, and something that I was fascinated to see a lot of journalists talk to him about his career and not really like give him any pushback on that. Like, hey, you're a prominent coach and you're out here betting. Like, I'm sure people, NFL coaches have something in their contract that says you can't bet on these games at all. So recently after this scandal, the UFC has doubled down on that and has made it very clear, that nobody is allowed to bet on their own fights or fights that they may be associated with via camp or whatever. But this is where things get really fishy now, right? So this whole investigation is being had about that particular fight and the way it played out. And the UFC came out and said, moving forward, if you are affiliated with Glory MMA in any way, that they're cutting ties with you, that you're not allowed to compete in the UFC until this investigation is complete. So basically, it's up to you to find a new camp if you want to keep fighting. If not, see ya, because of how crazy this is. And then the final big straw, which I think there's more jurisdictions to come into play after this, but multiple places in Canada, including Ottawa, which is one of their bigger provinces, have outright made a statement to say, we're not going to allow anyone to bet on the UFC, period, because we're not sure that this is a legitimate source of sporting. So we're not feeling comfortable allowing anyone to bet on this, because apparently, in addition to this one, they claim that there's other fights that did have suspicious activity too. So now that you got this sort of 1,000-foot perspective on what is, from my knowledge, the first gambling fiasco in MMA. No, I lied. There was one before this, but I'll talk to you guys about that later. The first big one since they become actual partners with betting leagues like DraftKings and things like that. So you can imagine they're literally encouraging on the broadcast to bet on these things, showing people lines. But in certain states, certain provinces, they're not even allowing this action. So just a crazy turn of events. I'm going to throw it to you guys to say, what are your thoughts on this scandal in general and how it's sort of playing out? And like, do you feel like the UFC was late? Like, do you think those policies should have been in place before any of this sort of hit the fan in that way?
Yeah, I definitely think that those policies should have been in place. Like you said, the NFL, NBA, those guys can't bet on their sport, period, let alone bet on their own games in that way, because there's a big penalty for that. We saw with Calvin Ridley in the NFL, he was away from the team and bet on some games and, hasn't been back since. So I think those things definitely should have been in place. And this man, if it, sounds like a fix, looks like a fix, you gotta believe it's a fix. Like this one has all the fixings of a fix. So it's hard to go against that. Now, I don't think it's a thing where people should say, oh, the whole sport is done. Like it's not to that aspect to where you just can't bet on it anymore. Just this one, was pretty big. But I think that the sport itself is still in good shape as far as people going forward being willing to bet on it based on, this very rare outcome that we're seeing now.
For sure. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, well, I think, this punishment is definitely going to be used as a deterrence, right? I don't think any, fighter wants to sacrifice their chances of doing what they love, right? And I think it's baffling to me that, these policies were never in effect to begin with. I mean, I think we've seen that a lot, whether it be the NBA, whether it be NFL, and obviously MMA now, where there are certain rules and regulations, you thought would have been implemented from the very beginning, you know. But it turns out it's just their rule books are still outdated, and it's not until this fiasco happens where it's gained such huge publicity, and you hear a lot of backlash from the community that something happens, right? And it's obviously terribly unfortunate. What I will say is I think you know. Gambling is something I do. But at the same time, I don't think it should be, I don't know. I don't think it should be like an extreme punishment. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it should be like banned from fighting forever, that sort of thing, because I feel like there are plenty of athletes in general who have done horrific things who are still out there on the football field, or still there on the basketball court, who are still fighting. Obviously, I don't have examples of that. I'm assuming not every fighter is a saint, right? I mean, nobody is a saint. Everyone has their flaws and imperfections and stuff. But I don't know. It's tough, man. This is pretty wild, though. I never would have. I mean, I know gambling has been around for the longest time, but I never thought it would affect the UFC like this. You know what I mean?
I
Because
agree. And the fact that Canada came out in that way, like so staunch to say, not even just people that are from Glory MMA, like UFC period. Like nobody can bet on the UFC at all because of these things that have happened. And I think moving forward, I think what really did James Krause in this situation is like his association with gambling as a whole. Like that makes it look so much worse. And just another great example of this, since this all happened, a lot of people have been looking into his podcast and the things he did during that time. And there's so many interviews of him talking about, I've made more money gambling now than I've ever made even in my UFC career. And this is someone who, as a
Ooh.
coach, was saying, I haven't made like I barely make any money doing coaching. I 100% make more money in doing gambling than doing coaching. And this is someone who is cornering a championship level fighter while wearing a Richard Mille. So you have 250K in disposable income that you could throw on your wrist. Um, that is not a good look, bro. Like I don't care, like especially in this industry, like I do not care where you say you got it from, if it was a gift or whatever. Like that's a huge investment for someone who admits on a daily in these interviews that you don't get paid a lot as a coach. So where's that money coming from? Like obviously, his association with gambling is just such a huge button topic, and since all this happened, Derek Minner has been released from the UFC. So initially, Dana White came out and was like, "There's nothing suspicious at all about this fight. There was nothing to look like," entirely poo-pooing the whole situation. They're going to do an investigation. They're going to look into it, and nothing happened. Everything was above board. That's what he said the day of the fight. And now this guy who was the person who lost ends up getting released. There's still like the verdict isn't out yet. Like we still don't know what's going to happen with James Krause. I personally think he's going to be banned for the sport for life, especially if there's any concrete evidence that he did bet or he had someone bet on that fight against his fighter. I think 100% that's enough reason to ban someone for life. And it really sucks. Like that's the hardest part about it for me as a fan is like, obviously I don't feel bad for the guy because now he can't do this, but I feel bad for all the people that were working with him and honestly getting big gains from training with him. This is someone who recently Brandon Moreno made his way to Glory MMA and has been training under him. So now he's out of a head coach. Like it's just so crazy to think of the way one person's decision making sort of affects so many other people detrimentally. Just wild. And then just to give a little brief explanation of that other situation I was telling you guys about. This one is even more wild. This shit sounds like something out of a movie. But there was a fight in 2015 between Taehyung Bang and Leo Kuntz. Hilarious fight names, by the way. It's like on the poster, Bang Kuntz. Hilarious. But they ended up fighting each other, and it came out that through ties to the Yakuza, like this is real. Taehyung Bang was actually blackmailed into throwing the fight. And they said, you're going to put this money on your opponent and you're going to throw the fight. And like, once you put that money on your opponent, whatever you get, you'll get a percentage of whatever we make off of it. But they basically forced him and said, if you don't do this, like, we're going to come after your family, like threatened him entirely going into the fight. And the day of the fight, they saw the line movement because he was initially the favorite, and then all this money goes in on the opposing guy. So he said that night that UFC officials came and told him like, hey, I just want to remind you, like, fight fixing is illegal. There's some weird activity going on with the books. And he said afterwards, because he got arrested for this and ended up being in jail for a couple months, he said that moment and that conversation with UFC officials scared him so much that he went out and just fought, like as if he didn't agree to throw the fight. He ended up winning the fight by unanimous decision, but still got put in jail for fight fixing and was in jail for, I think, 6 months before he was able to get out, obviously under the pretense that he was blackmailed and sort of threatened in order to do all of this. So that was an entirely different, crazy situation that ended similarly with these guys being sort of parted ways with. So we already saw Derek Minner's gone. I think James Krause is going to be banned for life. What do you guys think is an appropriate sentence, though?
Yeah,
Comes out.
for Kraus, definitely banned for life. If everything comes out that you described is true, that's unforgivable. Like you're doing everything you can to hurt the credibility of the sport at that point. So you can't have like that can't be around. And imagine like Pete Rose hasn't come back to baseball yet, and it doesn't seem like Pete Rose did as much as Krause has done. So I think that is definitely going to be banned for life for sure.
Yeah, I think I should also clarify what I said earlier. So I think if a fighter knowingly and willingly bets on himself to lose, especially to lose, and then they just so coincidentally loses, either through their own accord or cooperating with with a coach or an outside official, they should be banned for life. And I think, Damien said it well, and you said it well, Chris. It affects the credibility of the sport, right? Because then it puts into question, okay, how legitimate are these fights really? And I just for me, I think sort of what uh motivated my response earlier is thinking of like the Calvin Ridley situation, right? I mean, that's just a circumstance where he just placed a bet on his team, like an outside bet. Like he didn't talk to any teammates, he didn't talk to any coaches, he didn't speak to the owners. He literally was sitting at home in recovery, if I'm not mistaken, and just placed a bet on his team. That was it. I think situations like that, there should be a bit more leniency on the kinds of punishment in that regard. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing like an unrelated bet, like if you're a fighter and you bet on a random fight, I don't think you should be banned for life from the sport. I understand the ethics behind it because you're an athlete. Obviously, you're getting paid, large sums of money. And even your tough experiences are a blessing for others, right? I mean, I don't think, I think many people out there want to be on the UFC stage, right? They want to be able to do what they love. They want to be able, obviously there's the economic side of it, but it's also a matter of, how they put their blood, sweat, and tears into the sport. And then when you have this whole, gambling crisis happening, it's unfortunate, because it makes it seem as if that athletes who are doing things the right way, um, are these, people with ulterior motives, so it's unfortunate. It's just an unfortunate, wild situation.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Can't believe we're in the midst of it, and I'm really interested to see what ends up being the final verdict on that. But the second topic, and then I'll let you guys out of here. Conor McGregor has been in the news a lot lately because of a very evident change in physique. Obviously, he's coming off of a big, trying to remember the name of that bone. A shin injury where he snapped his bone quite literally in half, and apparently he pretty much outright came out and said it on Twitter, sort of firing back at all these people that were noticing. But the dude is looking jacked. Like he looks like he's like at least 200 pounds easy and swole. Like he's on that Liver King cycle. It looks like he's taking some kind of performance enhancing drug, and I think it's under the guise of the recovery from the injury, right? In order to get to a place where he can come back and compete. But what makes this such a controversial topic of conversation is UFC fighters are held to the standard of USADA testing. Now, USADA is an organization that is outside of the UFC, right? This is an independent organization. So, all the fighters are subject, and this is kind of crazy too, just to even talk about, but all the fighters are subject throughout 24/7 that they have what's called a whereabouts agreement. So you have to, in a portal every day, let people know where you're going to be, at what time range, what the exact address is, so that if they decide that today's your day that you're going to get drug tested, they can find you. So first of all, that's
Wow.
as an athlete, like just imagine that, right? Like just any
Yeah.
sort of move you make, you have to be transparent with your organization about, and they try to say you're not an employee. That's dicey on the first part of it. But if you end up having a certain amount of whereabouts failures, it can be considered as if you failed a drug test, and they'll give you weeks off, as if you failed, even though the reality of it is they just couldn't find you, right? They couldn't locate you enough times. But what makes this a hot button conversation is Conor McGregor, that is not in the testing pool currently, and that gets released because you can search up, when the person was last tested, when like they're planning whatever, like active information about these different fighters. You could search up anyone that's in the pool, and you can't search him up because he's not in the pool. Now, the only time
Oh,
fighters are not in the pool is either when they retire and they're no longer actively competing, or if you are not signed to the organization, right? Because how they're going to have you being tested if you're not fighting for them. So in the past, the only way to get out of the pool, even if you say, like, for example, you could say in an interview, like, I retired, but unless you tell the USADA pool I'm retired, they will continue to test you. So
oh,
a lot of the other athletes around the league were saying, I'm not even necessarily mad that Connor's on steroids. I'm mad that there isn't something written in writing that says that we can do that, because there's
wow.
not any provision that says you can take yourself out of the pool if you have an injury. You could take yourself out to do this, and that's clearly what Connor did. So I think the real question lies, first of all, when it comes to sports in general, not just combat sports, how do you guys feel about performance enhancing drug use and the sort of chase to catch performance enhancing drug users? Let's start there. What are your thoughts on PEDs in sport, period?
Uh, for me, it depends on the sport, right? When people talk about baseball and they are, just so ready to disregard what, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa and those guys did. And for me, it's not where you can put a normal person and give them steroids and they can do what Barry Bonds did. Like if you give me steroids, I'm just gonna be a swole podcaster for no reason. It's not gonna help me hit no home runs. I'm just gonna be up here big for no reason at all. So for me it depends on the sport. I think when it comes to fighting, that's where it becomes dangerous, right? Because it's a sport where even when you're not enhanced, your life is in danger. So imagine how much more it's going to be in danger when someone is, performing that maybe 2 times or 3 times what they normally would because of what they're on. So I think that in fighting sports, you definitely can't have it. But baseball, I don't mind it. I don't mind, a little more excitement or more home runs. In football, I guess you can say the same thing as with the fighting sports where it's dangerous. So you don't want them doing it. And with basketball, it's so much skill in basketball. It's very few players that steroids would help in that way. So I wouldn't, mind if someone was taking it in a recovery type of way or anything like that. But just fighting and football, can't have it at all.
Definitely. What about you, Matt?
It's a tough combo to have, only because I'm no medical expert, so I mean, obviously steroids work differently between every person, and stuff. So generally, there's ethical side of me which says absolutely not, right? And for those obvious reason being that if you have someone who's working out endlessly, obviously looking to perfect their craft, um, just through sheer, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just without the use of PEDs, and then then you're like, okay, well that's kind of unfair, but I don't know. I mean, it just depends on what kind of effect it has. I definitely see like with the front of fighting part of it. I mean, if you have a 250-pound grown man who's on PEDs and is looking to strike a fatal blow against a fighter in the head, that's concerning. I mean, like Damien was saying too. I mean that you have probably a bunch of long-term injuries that come out of the UFC or just fighting in general. You know what I mean? So imagine someone who's amped up with steroids goes in and lands all these blows in different parts of the body. I mean, that hurts already. If it's just a normal fighter, imagine what it's like, otherwise. So I don't know. I mean, generally speaking, I don't see the purpose in well, I see the purpose in using it. Obviously, I mean it's a performance enhancement drug for a reason, but I don't know. Maybe I think most athletes should just try and stray away from it. I don't know if there are any addictive qualities to it. Like I said, I'm not really well informed or well educated on this topic to give like a very in-depth opinion. Um, but I don't know. I mean, so what are your thoughts?
Yeah, me personally, I feel like this is almost like um the old adage of what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? I feel like if when we look back 20 years from now, I think it's going to be pretty obvious that everyone was on drugs, right? That's how I feel personally, and not everyone
Mm.
agrees with that. I just feel like when it comes to trying to be the best at whatever it is, like you're going to exhaust any resource you can. I mean, there's so many rumors about so many different players in different sports that have either looked different or played different, and what is the reason for that, right? I think to a certain extent there is designer drugs that are out there that aren't being picked up on these drug tests because they don't even know to test for it yet, right? Like I think that's how far ahead the science is to the sport, and the only way to find that out is retroactively, right? That's actually how TJ Dillashaw got caught. He didn't get caught because they found it in his system currently. It was because they retested something they already had from him months back with new testing after they were
Oh,
made a
wow.
discovery in EPO that they were able to find out that he was taking back then. So I think when you consider it that way, I kind of wish there was organizations outside of the UFC that were just fucking honest about it. Like, hey, like you want to get geared up and look absolutely insane and come and fight like a damn superhero. Like, this is the place to do it. I think there is that, like, honestly, I feel like there is room for innovation in that way to allow for that thing. As far as how I feel morally, I definitely do agree with you guys. I feel like when it comes to contact sports that can affect you and your cognitive ability specifically down the line, like there's no room for it at all. But at the same time, I just feel like creating a level playing field, like there's no such thing as a level playing field when you have a system that's made to prevent people from doing things like this. And then out of nowhere, people like Conor McGregor and Brock Lesnar get preferential treatment that allows them to do things that other people can't under the same exact guise of anti-doping, right? So I think long term, a lot of this is going to sort of come full circle, and we're just going to realize to a certain extent, like, no, everybody's on fucking steroids, like Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz said back in the day. But as far as what I think about this situation, I hope that they do change the legislation to say not like come and do steroids clause, like that's not the reason, but if you do have a leg break like that or a significant enough injury that's going to take away 2+ years from the sport, that you should be able to take yourself out of the pool for medical reasons. But it's not like you can just, like, there needs to be parameters to that too, right? Like you can't just take yourself out of the sport and then look like Conor McGregor's looking right now. Like I think there's no reason to be confused about why people are coming at you about this when you look like a different person, bro. Like I encourage you guys to look him up after the show. Like the dude is clearly on some shit, like clearly. And his plan is to come back and fight later on. So of course, once that time comes, make sure he's clean. Make sure that y'all test him enough times to make sure that he's clean now. I think all of that matters in competition. But at the end of the day, there should be a way for these athletes to do these things under a doctor's recommendation to make sure that they can recover and compete fast enough. Because let's just be real, like, would we rather have that or have people like when Anderson Silva came back, where he just looks super old and isn't the same fighter that he was but pre that injury? Like, there's no reason for that, in my opinion. I think give the athletes a chance above board to sort of take a step back and say, this is why I'm doing it, this is what I'm doing. And if you make a space for that, then I think as long as it's not being abused and you have a way to monitor it, it should be good for the sport as a whole. But I think giving someone preferential treatment and then not explaining it, and then sort of all these people are asking you these questions in the interim to try to find out what's going on, like that's just such a bad look, in my opinion, where it's very clear that you're doing something to pander to your star's big your sport's biggest star versus doing something that's actually looking out for the betterment of athletes, right? Like I think that's the key for it. So interested to see what comes out for that Conor McGregor interview post that. And with that being said, Damien dipped out. I don't blame him. It's that time, you guys. So we're gonna sign off just like that. Matt, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Please give the people your information on where they can find you. You're muted, bro.
That was embarrassing. Let me try that again. You can find me over on Instagram at Matt T 29 over on Instagram. But most importantly, I do 3 other podcasts over on the OTS platform, which includes We Can Be Heroes, Realist, and Boom Squad. So if you're interested in hopping on any of those respective podcasts, please feel free to let me know. And lastly, thank you for your support, not only on this podcast, but obviously for the ones I mentioned earlier. And thank you, Chris, for having me on for yet another episode. I had a great time, and I'm glad we were able to get another one done.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
I love slowly indoctrinating you into the MMA space. Like I just feel like I'm giving you a little bit to chew on every time we speak, and I'm hoping someday I light that spark and you become a fan. I'm just leaving you some breadcrumbs, right? Follow me along the way. That's how I feel. But Matt, thank you again for joining. It's always fun to have you on. Damien as well. Thank you so much for joining. Always great to have your energy on the show and really reflect and have some great minds to bounce off of, right? Definitely adds a lot to the conversation. So you can find me at Negron MMA on Twitter, as well as Chris Negron _ on Instagram. But most importantly, as Matt said, make sure that you follow the brand at OTS Media Co. on all platforms and OTS Media on YouTube to get all of our shows as soon as they release. So with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Matt and Damien, once again. And until next time, peace. We'll catch you guys. See
Peace,
ya.
everybody.